this point, we are ready to serve, but there are two very important steps that we need to do. First, turn off the heat. Why is that important? I'm about to add a very important ingredient now, and that is cheese. You can use any kind of cheese you want. My wife will not let me use Romano, which is my favorite. You can use Parmigiano, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm going to share this with her as soon as I'm done with you guys. The reason why I turn off the heat is because if you cook with cheese and you still have the heat underneath, unless you have some super pots and pans like I do, which are non-stick, with the heat coming from underneath, the cheese will go to the very bottom of the pan and it will stick, it will burn, also changing for the worse the flavor of what you have. Once you get to this point, you're pretty much done. You don't need anything else, unless you're a little boy like me. And a little boy like me likes a little bit of butter. La glasatura, the glazing that the butter gives, is, in my opinion, one final addition that kicks this recipe to the next level. Oh, yes. We're ready to serve this. Let me show you how to plate it to make it look beautiful. One of the greatest gifts I got from destiny, and the way in which I was favored, was that I was able to cook for my father. So when I plate a pasta like this, I'm always thinking in my head, what would I do if I was to give this to Vincenzo? His name was Vincenzo, but me and my brother kiddingly used to call him Vinny. He was the perfect Vinny. And my father always had something to say. Even the first few times that I cooked for him, as I was laying out the ingredients for him, he would always say, ah, you could have done this better, ah, you could have done that better. I remember once when I was able to make him this recipe, and he said, prossima volta che vieni giù a Palermo, which means the next time you come down to Palermo, you gotta teach me how to make it. So this pasta, in a certain way, for me, is very romantic. To me, pasta is paradise. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you make pasta with zucchini sauce, Sicilian style. My dad passed away some years ago, but to this date, when I want to remember him the way that I want to remember him, I like to look at his photographs, not only because he was a master at what he did in the garden. I hope that some of his DNA eventually got passed on to me, and while I've not found my gift yet in gardening, I would like to believe that one day I could make beautiful zucchinis like his, or cauliflowers, or artichokes. Yeah, I would like to be a gardener. Picciotti, picciotta, yamon in the cucina. This is Sicilian for ladies and gentlemen, come to the kitchen. Today we're going to make red wine sauce, an old classic made easy. Steak au poivre with scalloped potatoes and arugula, served with red wine sauce. Another great classic dish, salmon with sauteed Brussels sprouts and red wine sauce. And learn how my fondness for the art of plating is my wife's sacrifice. Come for the recipes, stay for the story. The French call it mirepoix. As Italians, we call it soffritto. Plus, we look cuter because we move our hands like this. If you're an Italian, when you're born, you got a kind of a DNA that doesn't let you talk and not move the hands at the same time. You got to talk. You got to move like this. So a Frenchman will say mirepoix. An Italian guy will say it's soffritto. You see the way the hands move? That's the thing. That's the thing that makes us different. Ultimately, the ingredients are the same. Carrots, celery, and onion. The triumvirate, which is at the base of every sauce that's made by anyone. It's just, and this is my opinion, it sounds cuter in Italian. On the other hand, if you were to ask me again, even tastes better in Italian. Yeah, it does. One of the great trips that I took with my family when I was barely a teenager was going to France. It was very exciting for me. I wanted to eat, I wanted to try French food. I remember this one time, this fancy restaurant that my dad took me, my brother, my mom. For the first time, I had steak with red wine sauce. It became my mission that I had to figure out how to make this sauce. And this sauce was a disastrous series of attempts that started as early as me at the age of 18, all the way into my early 30s until I developed the perfect understanding on how to make the most delicious red wine sauce. It is something that I love and adore, and it's something that you can make at home with very basic technique and as simple as 1, 2, 3. Let me show you how. Making a red wine sauce, it's like directing an orchestra in the making of a concert. What am I saying? Each one of the ingredients has a purpose. Each one of the ingredients has a role, and this role adds to the sauce in a specific fashion. Let's get started first with the pancetta. The reason why I like pancetta, you could use bacon if you don't have pancetta, is because I find that pork is something that brings an incredible turn for the best to the flavor of the sauce as a whole. I like to cook it and let it render. Don't worry about the excessive fat, because one of the things that we're going to do afterwards, once the sauce has cooked all the way through, I'm going to show you how to actually get the fat out of the sauce. You don't need to cook it too long. You have to wait enough so that it starts to brown a little bit, because the making of the sauce primarily is a long braise. Now we are at the point in which the next thing that we want to add is the il soffritto. What is the soffritto? Very simple. We have onion, carrots, celery. You don't need to be too elegant in the way in which you cut it, as a matter of fact. At this point, you notice that I'm not adding any pepper and salt, because there's an enormous amount of that already into the pork that I've used, the pancetta in this case, heavily salted. All that I want to do right now is just to get them to sweat a little bit and to brown up. One of the things that I came to realize is the importance of caramelization. In this case, I'm not adding salt or pepper. This is just a touch of sugar that I want to add and make sure that it's coating each one of the ingredients in there, because the sugar right now fighting against the salt in the pork pretty soon will create the perfect combination of ingredients. But I'm not finished. There's another bit here that you're going to love. This is tomato paste. I find that used in this fashion blooms, opens up. It gives to the sauce a breath. It's like the sauce stands proud. It just discovered a whole new horizon to it. And I find this to be very important. Traditionally speaking, the herbs that you should add to this are bay leaves. I've done it with bay leaves and it tastes fantastic. But there is a little Stellinism that I like even more, and that is the addition of a little bit of rosemary. This is rosemary from my garden up front, a couple of pieces that I love to add in there, and just one more element, one more note. The only thing that I'm upset about is that this does not have smell-o-vision, because if you could only feel the aromas as they're opening up. The next thing that I like to do is to add garlic. In this case, I like to add whole pieces of garlic. Don't worry about it, because you're going to strain all these ingredients afterwards, so don't be concerned by it. Look at what a color there is there already. This is the base. This is what's going to let the sauce sing. What I'm about to show you next is one more trick, and that's the addition of a little bit of flour. Why do we add the flour? We want the flour to cook so that the sauce will be thicker as the sauce cooks over a long period of time. And the next thing that we're going to do is, first and foremost, the addition of the red wine. What red wine? Burgundy would be great. Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Merlot. You choose the wine that you want. Ultimately, the wine that you choose will give the sauce a different flavor, but it will not make it bad. There's not only one wine that's great. The one thing that I would propose is, don't use the best wine that you have, stuff that costs you $200, $300 a bottle. Enjoy the wine and drink it. Use, average wine for this. And the next thing that I like to do is add chicken stock. Why? I'm gonna use this particular wine sauce for several things. And I find that the chicken stock has this ability of playing nice with everybody. When you do this at home, you bring this to a boil. Once this reaches a boil, I want you to reduce it down to a simmer and let the sauce cook, simmering for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. The sauce has cooked perfectly for almost 2 hours. We have strained the sauce, and then we have moved the sauce to a degreasing cup. Why? Do you remember before when I told you I'm going to show you to get rid of the excessive oil? Here you can see the sauce right at top in this lighter color. This is all the fat that has accumulated. You need this instrument at home in order to be able to take the grease off. Watch what happens. As I pour this into the pan, the sauce comes out holding back the fat. The fat is the yellowish lighter color on top. The sauce is not yet to sauce consistency. That's why we're going to bring this to a boil. Once it reaches a boil, anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes on simmer will give you the consistency that you're looking for. The sauce is reduced to the perfect consistency. I'm gonna turn it off, and now we're ready to plate. I don't believe in a time machine, but this sauce maybe is the closest thing that comes to a time machine. The fact that I was able on my own to repeat this performance that I saw as a child in this French restaurant in my first trip to France. This is more than a sauce. This is a realization of a dream. This is an aspiration. But this is how you make red wine sauce. One of the things that was always told to me is the food, it's good. You put it on the plate and the food speaks by itself. I remember as a 10-year-old having issues with my mother in the way she would plate the pasta. Telling her how the sauce should actually be placed in a certain fashion, how the plate that she chose was the wrong plate. I don't know what happened to me, why was it that I was so motivated, because my mom still to this very day, she cooks better than me, but the way in which the food always looked on the plate meant a great deal to me. When I think of making scalloped potatoes, I get excited because to me it's like making dessert. Basically, we have many layers of thinly cut potatoes that we separate with cheese. When we bake it, all this wonderful cheese and potatoes molding into one. But one of the most important things is to make sure that you grease the pan properly. So what we have in here is butter. You got to use your hands. There is no other tool that will work as good as your hands. And what I like to do is to spread it all over the pan so that the sides and the bottom of the pan are completely covered. Why do I do this? Even though this pan is a non-stick, for flavor, pure unadulterated flavor. This flavor right here that the butter gives to the potato is going to enhance them enormously. I cut these potatoes by hand with a knife. You can also use a mandolin. But if you do it with a mandolin, do me a favor, never be in a rush. When you're in a rush, that's when problems do occur. There is not a point for us to be overly taken by this, and especially since I cut these potatoes just about an hour ago, you notice that some of them are starting to turn. It will happen to you at home. Is this a problem? Not at all. Once they cook, they completely collapse. The one thing that I find important is the selection of the cheeses. What you will find today is that the basic cheeses that I use are part of the traditional way of doing it, which is the Swiss cheese, Gruyere, and Parmigiano. So here we have some Swiss cheese that I've already put together and chopped up by hand. We're going to sprinkle it right on top like this, and then you go with Parmigiano. And when you go with Parmigiano, you just use it. Then what I do at this point always is a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. The next thing that we're going to do is we create another layer. Right here it is. Here we go with this right on top of it. So here we go again with another big, abundant addition of my Gruyere. By the way, Gruyere is nothing more than another name for Swiss cheese. It tends to be a little bit sharper, and I like the Gruyere in the family of Swiss cheeses for the very, very reason. This is the top now. This is the one that you want to put all the extra cheese that you can, just like this. Remember, these potatoes, as they cook, they will fall on top of each other. And now we go again here with Parmigiano, molto Parmigiano. Now, the last addition that we're going to make is very important. What we have in here is half and half. I've done this with milk only. I've done it with cream only. I find that half and half, which is basically a mixture, equal mixture of milk and cream, gives me the perfect rendition. So you add it, and how much do you add? Depending on the pan that you use, you want to bring it at least 3/4 of the way up. And there we are. This is the perfect amount that we have for this particular pan. The oven right now is preheated at 375 degrees. Sometime I even preheat it to 400 degrees because you lose some heat once you open the oven. So the scalloped potatoes are ready and the oven is preheated, and now I'm going to place them into the oven. Baby, it's out of the oven. It's very, very hot. You will notice it's cooked all the way around. Now, most people like to dive right into it. Don't do that. What I propose that you do is that you let it rest, let it get to room temperature, then put it into the refrigerator and let it rest overnight. Why? My opinion is that the flavors get even better. But what is the added advantage of letting it rest overnight? Let me show you. Take a look at this pan. Here are two pieces that I cut in perfect square. It makes it ideal when you want to serve it to your friends to basically cut it into whatever shape you want. And then using a pan, you can put it in the oven to reheat it. You don't need any more than, I would say, 350, 375, between 10 and 15 minutes at the most, depending on the size of the piece. And this is how you make scalloped potatoes. The steak that we're using in this particular dish is a filet mignon. Now, when it comes on spicing the steak, you can do pretty much anything you want. Salt, pepper, onion, paprika, whatever drives you, whatever you feel like painting, go your way. What I've done with this steak, I've done what's commonly known as un poivre. Basically, I've taken peppercorns, I've crushed them, and then I roll the steak until it's completely coated with it. So here we go. The important thing that you must do when cooking a steak, in a pan especially, is do not move it. When you take a look at a steak like this, the first thing that you want to have in your mind to kind of make an evaluation of how long it will take to take it where you want it to go is, how do you like your steak? Some people go, I like it medium rare, medium done, medium well, I like it well done. Well, some people like it well done. There's nothing you can do about it. It's the way it happens. But no matter how you like to have it, one of the things that you need to ensure is that the steak is perfectly cooked on each side. I see often young chefs moving the steaks back and forth, back and forth. For the first 4 minutes at least, the steak has to sit in one position untouched. How long does it take for the steak to cook? A steak like this, we have at about an inch thick. I would say 4 minutes per side might take you to your medium rare. The steak is cooked perfectly on one side. We need to turn it to the other side, but I want to show you something. I want to tell you the reason why. I like to put a spatula underneath the steak, and as I turn the steak, it gives me complete control. More often than not, people simply flip it this way. What happens? If there's still a little bit of water in there, it's going to splash back. This allows you to avoid the splash back. But trust me when I tell you, it does help. It is at this point that I like to do something unique. Well, not so unique. It is the process known as arrosé. And I like to do it because it really gives us an additional layer of flavor that you haven't seen before. So a softened piece of butter is added to the hot oil. And then we're going to use this butter to braise the steak with. And here we go. Why do we do this? Is the butter really needed? Well, I find that every time I use this technique, the steak, for me, almost has a sweeter flavor, and I can taste the butter in just about every bite that I take. In this particular steak, because of the aggressiveness of the peppercorn, which we used as a coating on the outside of the steak, one of the things that I want to do is add something that softens the flow of all the flavors attacking. Remember, we're going to have this with a wonderful bit of arugula, and also with the red wine sauce. This is something that allows me truly to combine all the flavors together as if colors within the context of a painting. We now have cooked the steak exactly to where I wanted to have it. But before we can serve it, we need to let it rest. The amount of time that you need to let this rest for is 5 minutes. So while the steak is resting, let me show you how to make the arugula. Cooking arugula is very, very simple, but you need to think where you want to take it and why. Arugula by itself already has a fairly intense flavor. It's very peppery, very salty, just naturally in the way in which it is. Doesn't need too much help. But what I'm about to show you is one thing that, in my opinion, makes it easy to cook it and at the same time imparts a great deal of flavor. It starts always with a little bit of red pepper flakes. So here we go. In the oil, we're now going to add the garlic. The oil is nice and hot. The garlic is chopped, as you can see, and you always see me adding big pieces of garlic, but not this time. This time I want this garlic to infuse the oil. As soon as the garlic starts to brown, immediately I lower it down to simmer and I add the arugula right in it. And then you stir like this. Let the arugula cook in that. What's happening is the arugula is bringing down the temperature. It's wilting into it. And it's becoming exactly what we love it. All the flavors are coming out together. This is fantastic. It's wonderful. I love it. And there we are. The arugula is perfectly sauteed. It's exactly what I love. Every bite that you will take of this will have all the flavors that you did not expect. And the garlic really is going to be a fantastic addition. Turn off the heat, the arugula is ready, the meat is ready, the red wine sauce is ready, we're ready to plate. Let me show you how. Plating to some is simply placing the ingredients on the plate. Treat it as if it was an exercise in painting. Think of yourself as Caravaggio, as if you're painting the perfect chiaroscuro, where every element within the painting has a personality of its own. These dishes that you have cooked with so much care and so much love at this point become alive. Your passion seeps through with every bite that will be taken. And as people will sit around the table, drinking their wine, smiling, telling the story, taking the bites of your food, you will know you have made it happen. And here it is. That's how you make steak au poivre with red wine sauce, sauté arugula with garlic, and scalloped potatoes. I would like to say that I had aspirations of becoming the Caravaggio plating. Being able to place all the pieces of a dish, of a recipe in the dish in such a form that would be so simple, they would look almost as if it just happened, and yet so involved, where the process of the simplicity was a great deal of thinking for height, width, color. My wife is highly bothered by that because I still do it to this very day, and in spite of the fact that it's just the two of us, it takes me forever to plate. In the early 80s, one dish that became very, very popular here in the United States was salmon with red wine sauce. More often than not, it was served in French restaurants, which at the time I used to go a great deal to. Every time I would actually have it, I would say, I have an idea on how to make it better. I have an idea on how to make it better. Until my wife said to me, look, if you think you're so much better, why don't you learn how to do it? She should not have said that. It took a long time for me to eventually master this dish, but I'm going to share with you how to make this unique dish that actually puts together fish and red wine. Let me show you. First, we got to make the Brussels sprouts. In the pan, we already have some olive oil, which is nice and hot. Sicilian style, always add red pepper flakes just because I like it to get nice and hot and spicy. And then we add our bacon. You can use any kind of bacon you want. I find that artisanal bacon, it's always the best. It has more flavor, it has a better personality, and it really tells the story. The kind of story that ultimately allows you, when this dish is completed, to have all these different elements of flavor. Every ingredient that you can upgrade, it's like elevating the tone in which you tell your story. And when I cook it until they just start to brown, and the reason why I cut it like this is to give it a look of lardons, which is a French name for this particular cut of bacon. The Brussels sprouts, we have treated slightly different. We have sliced them thin. Why are we doing that? Well, Brussels sprouts, pretty resilient. It's one of those veggies that has a personality and a strength of its own. We really need to break it down. I'm gonna increase it to high heat. At this point, another addition that I like to make, just to give it another element of flavor, is a little bit of chopped garlic, bean chopped. If we add it at the beginning, it would have burned. Instead, by adding it at the end, after all the ingredients have gone, it will give its flavor, it will infuse it, but it will not be overtaking the dish. You also notice that I'm cooking this in a saucepan, unusual for this particular type of thing. The reason why is because I love stirring about, I love interacting with the dish, and also this prevents for the Brussels sprouts during this process to jump outside of the pan. I find this to be very, very helpful to me. At this point, as you can see, they're softened up quite a bit, and I add a little bit of chicken stock now. Perfect. This needs a few more minutes to cook and complete, so why don't we do this? I'm going to put this aside, and while the Brussels sprouts are cooking, I'm going to show you how to make the salmon. So what we're going to do, we're going to cook the salmon on medium heat, but I have preheated the pan to high heat. I just reduced down the heat because I want the first contact to give it a nice sear. All that I've done with the salmon is just salt and pepper. I personally find that you can still get a nice little bit of browning on the outside, but by cooking it longer on a lower heat, you maintain the juiciness of the fish. And that, to me, is the most important thing. Now we're ready to turn it to the other side. Ah, beautiful. This is exactly the browning I was looking for. Now, here comes the magic. And this magic is a technique that the French chef called arrosé. So in spite of the fact that we have olive oil in there, we do add now a little piece of butter. We let the butter melt into the pan. So I tilt the pan toward me and I bathe it. Look at that. Look at that. Mamma mia, che bellezza. Guarda. Now, I get passionate about this because I know that this butter is now penetrating all the way through into the salmon. As you can see right in here on the split that's taking place, the butter is going straight into every fiber of it. And the way the salmon will taste once I serve it to you, it will be something that you never had before. Look at the perfect crust up at the top and the tenderness that still is. Oh, mamma mia. To have a figure in mind when you cook the salmon, always keep in mind this. A salmon like this, of this side, a piece of this shape, will take about 3 minutes per side to cook perfect. Once you cook the salmon exactly 3 minutes per side, turn off the heat. Now, there's one more thing that I need to do with the Brussels sprouts, and then we're ready to plate it. All right. The Brussels sprouts are perfectly done. As you can see, all the chicken stock that was left in there has evaporated. That's why we added just a little bit. And now you can see how nice and soft we are. The last bit of addition is a little bit of butter, just to increase a little bit more of the flavor to it. If you wanted to, at this point, you could even use and add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. It will go wonderful, even with this recipe. The Brussels sprout is perfect. The fish is perfect. We have the red wine sauce ready to go. Ready to plate. Let me show you. And when it finally comes to plating, think of yourself as a painter. Think of yourself as an artist who is deploying, demonstrating the beauty of the art that is just created within the assembly of each one of the ingredients on the plate in a way that is enchanting. Sometimes the most beautiful things in life are the simple ones. And I hope that this dish that came from my heart, from my soul, from my mind, from my passion will inspire you to turn your kitchen into your favorite restaurant. And this is how you make salmon with Brussels sprouts and bacon and red wine sauce. My wife says, I like you better when you just started out. I says, why? I'm better now. I say, yeah, the flavors are better, but the food always comes out cold. It takes you forever for you to do the plating. What do you do then? And I say, honey, I'm sacrificing myself and you for our art. If I'm gonna do a TV show about cooking, you gotta know what it looks great. And if the payoff is that you gotta eat it lukewarm, so be it. I don't think she has forgiven me yet. No, I don't think she has. Emotion, then life would have been perfect. I must say that after many years of working on TV, I can actually edit myself on call to the most minimalistic sound that could be imperviously disturbing within the context of an interview such as this. And I find inside of me this genius that goes untapped. I deserve more than just an Emmy. I think an Oscar should be in the doable. My wife always asks me, why are you always smiling? And I say to her, because I'm cooking today. Today, I'm gonna show you how to make pasta alla norma, how to marry fried eggplant and smoked mozzarella, of course. Rollatini di melanzane, filled with ricotta cheese and covered with picchio pacchio sauce. And ricotta pudding, my interpretation of one of my childhood favorites. And find out why I love cheese. Yes, it's got something to do with the taste. A lot of it, it's in the heart. Come for the recipes. Stay for the story.
I love cheese. I love all kind of cheese. I love Italian cheese, French cheese. The more the merrier. I love them all. A real chef should say that cheese, a specific kind, a type that is made certain times of the year in certain fashion, flavors. To me, when I think of cheese, it's the memories that I associate with cheese.
Pasta alla norma, a Sicilian specialty that requires the making of fried eggplant. Very simple. Let me show you how to make it. We're about to deep fry the eggplant using extra light olive oil, super hot, and using a skimmer. I insert it this way. This does several things for me. It allows me to control the drop of the eggplant without any splashback. This is very important. This oil, if not managed properly, it could splash back and cause serious problems. This way instead, it goes straight in it. Why are we doing it this way? That's the one thing you should ask me. Why don't we just saute it? It's so much easier. One of the big problems that eggplant does have is that it absorbs an enormous amount of oil. It's like a sponge. So when you deep fry like this, you achieve several goals. The number one goal is that as soon as the eggplant cube hits the olive oil, it gets seared. So all the juices are trapped on the inside, and it prevents for any oil to be sucked into the eggplant. It makes this eggplant still, deep fried and dealt with oil, but it's much, much lighter than when you saute it in the olive oil using a saute pan, because at that point what you will notice is that the eggplant can actually absorb a time and a half its volume, and that could be very, very greasy. Now, let's pay attention and see what happens here. We got the perfect color, so let me take this out of here. I'm loving using this tool. Perfetto, perfetto, perfect. Before we continue with the rest of the recipe, there's another addition. While the eggplant is super hot like this, I like to add some extra flavor. So we go with some chopped, fresh mint. Why mint? Mint is a Sicilian spice, and we put it everywhere if we can. And in this case, it's perfect. And the next thing that we're going to do is Romano cheese, right on top of it. Why? This is super hot, so the cheese and the mint are going to coat the outside of the eggplant. So when we use this inside the sauce, every piece of eggplant will have a flavor of its own. Now, we're done with this. Next, I'm going to show you to make the sauce. Now, we got extra virgin olive oil in the pan. While the olive oil is getting nice and hot, let's add some red pepper flakes. As usual, I like to add it a little bit spicy. More often than not, this is the way in which we do it in Western Sicily. Eastern Sicily, they're a little bit more smooth and calm with the flavors, but in Palermo, adventurous people. Yes, what can I say? The next thing that we're going to do, garlic. The garlic is nice and thick, and we're gonna cook it here in the olive oil. Now, the reason why I like to use extra virgin olive oil is because the olive oil is one of the significant ingredients inside the sauce. And what it does for us, it brings out its natural flavor. So you'll find that olive oils from Sicily are completely different from olive oils that instead come from Tuscany or from France or from Spain. I think that the Sicilian olive oils are fantastic, but you be the judge of what is the flavor that you like the most, because ultimately it will be in your sauce. While the garlic is getting nice and brown, we're gonna add some onions. White onions is what I chose to go with this time. And we sprinkle this around just like that. Lower the heat a little bit. This is the base that I want to have before I give all the other building steps that will come next. The next thing that I want to do is to add a little bit of wine, white wine. Just enough for un profumino. Un profumino in Italian means a little aroma. You just want to give it something that, just a splash of it that almost caresses the ingredients without overtaking them. Because on top of this, we're going to build the sauce with other ingredients that already have flavors of their own. So the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to add tomato sauce. And together with the tomato sauce, a little bit of chicken stock. If you're making this and you want to maintain it a complete vegetarian, you can go with just the water from the pasta, or you can go for some vegetable stock instead. Perfect. Now stir it about and let the sauce come together. As soon as the sauce comes together, and will take about I would say we're gonna bring it to a quick boil. Once it reaches a boil, I'm gonna let it simmer for about 8 minutes or so. All the flavors will come together. We don't need any more than 8 minutes because the tomato sauce, in this case, a plain marinara, already has a full flavor of its own. The chicken stock has a full flavor of its own. All that I wanted to do was to build up some of the other flavors with the other ingredients that we added. So let's just let it rest for a moment or so. The sauce has gotten the consistency we want. The pasta is ready to go. One small addition that I like to make at this point is to add a little bit of the eggplant that we already fried, just to add it to give the flavor of eggplant to the sauce. I'm gonna save a little bit more that I will use just for topping, for looks. Mamma mia, che bellezza. All right, at this point, we're ready to go. Now, I've cooked the pasta al dente, which means the pasta is not cooked all the way through. Al dente is an Italian definition of the pasta, which translated loosely means to the bite. Instead, if I could explain to you what al dente means, al dente is an Italian way in which we turn the pasta into a steak. How can we do this? Pasta, of all things, was one of the least expensive foods that people could buy at the store. By cooking it al dente, you have to bite into the pasta. And by biting into the pasta, you almost have this impression that the pasta itself is a solid piece of protein. But there's another reason why we have the pasta now cooking into the sauce. You see already the sauce decreasing in volume as it cooks into the pasta. Why is this taking place? In this case, the pasta has ridges on them, as you can see right here. The other part is that this sauce is getting trapped inside the pasta itself and penetrating the pasta layer by layer by layer. This is the definition of a professional rendition of pasta. And you can see when the pasta arrives to be completely enveloped, surrounded, and every bite that you take, the pasta and the sauce itself go as one. Now, I am ready for my secret weapon. What is that weapon? Well, let me turn off the sauce so I can talk to you about this. We're going to add a very unique cheese. Let me add it right now. This cheese is called scamorza. In other words, scamorza is smoked mozzarella. Smoked mozzarella is the typical cheese that is associated with this particular kind of pasta. It has a very smoky taste to it, and it does not have the softness that you're accustomed to get from fresh mozzarella. Rather, it's a little bit harder, but the flavor that it has is astonishing, astonishing. So we're done with the pasta, and now we're ready to plate. Let me show you how to do that. The plating of pasta is, for me, to say the very least, a religious experience. It's not just pasta alla norma, which I'm serving you right now, but any kind of pasta, because I think of all the dishes that I know how to make, pasta is the one that I connect with the most. The cheese, the mozzarella that is melted into, now is making what is known il filo, string. This is the signature of the look of pasta alla norma. Before I serve it, I like to do two things. I like to add the extra bit of eggplant that I saved, and then there is one last addition, and that is the addition of Romano cheese, which in my opinion completely brings this to the next level. This is not just a pasta from my youth, this is pasta alla norma. Pasta done according to the rules. And this is how you make pasta alla norma.
Specifically, this one memory that I have of my wife coming to Sicily, visiting with me and my family, my father arranging this special moment of taking us to a farmer to show us how ricotta was made fresh. This farmer that was dressed in a pink shirt of all things and perfectly pressed pants managed to actually milk the animal, place the milk into the cold room, thicken it, make the ricotta live in front of us, and then move it into the basket, which he placed to hang so that the ricotta would dry. And then immediately he picked up another basket that he had done earlier into the day and gave it to me and my wife to taste. I thought I knew what ricotta tasted like, but there is ricotta that you buy at the store, and then it's ricotta that you buy fresh, made by the farmer.
Rollatini di melanzane. This you're going to love. I'm going to show you to make a typical Sicilian dish that involves eggplant and ricotta. And then I'm going to top it with something special. You're going to love this. Easy to make, super tasty. Let me show you to make it. Picchio Pacchio del Conte. This is a very simple recipe that requires specific tools. I have noticed that most chefs usually like to have a big knife like this to go at it. However, I believe that a small knife is the one that really will give us the ability of cutting the tomatoes properly, and I'm going to show you right now how to do it. So take a look at this. Roma tomatoes I find to be the best tomatoes, and what I like to do first, I like to cut them in half, exactly like this. Then once you cut it in half, we cut them in quarters, exactly like this. And then we want to core them. So let's go to the coring process. This one, almost the core has come out already. So this is what I do. Using the knife, I take this out, move it away, take this to the other side, do the same thing right on over here. And I'm going to do this with all the tomatoes. So this one goes to the side, this one goes to the side. Let's do it here with another big piece. We'll repeat the process once again. We cut it in quarters. And now, watch this because this is the easiest part of the technique. The knife, I like to go like this. You see the way I'm holding the thumb down here? This gives you guidance, and also never be in a rush when you go through. When it gets down to here, boom, you're taking off the whole thing. Look how clean it is already. And now we finish up with the remaining tomatoes. Okay, now we're ready to cut into small dice. Watch this. What I like to do by using the point is going right at it and cut it into the sections that you want. The point gives you a huge advantage. With these fingers, you almost have an instant guard because you're resting it on the knuckles right here, making sure that when you draw it down, you don't cut your finger. This is the most important part of this technique. Now you have all these tiny squares, you see, and now we go and we make it into small cubes. By doing it this way, you avoid the risk that more often is involved when using a large blade, the shadows the view in front of you, and in spite of the fact that you might think you're moving faster with a bigger blade, you're actually putting yourself in quite a danger. Look how beautiful all these little pieces are. And this is a technique that you can use over and over and over again for any kind of vegetable that you want to cut into this particular shape. Let's do it one more time together. Here we are. This is the kind of salsa that more often than not is made in summer when the tomatoes are the sweetest. But sometimes it happens that the tomatoes that you buy at your local supermarket is not as sweet as you think it is. So the way to bring it back to nature is very simple. Here we go. A little bit of sugar sprinkled on top just to bring back some of the original sweetness. Then, if you want on the spicy side, a little bit of pepper does help. A little bit of salt. When you use salt, has to be sea salt. Sea salt is the best kind of salt there is. Then the next thing that we're going to add is chopped garlic. Now, this is too much. I would say every 5 tomatoes, you don't want to use any more than 2 chopped garlic cloves, depending on how big they are. If they're really small, maybe 3, but no more than that because the garlic will marinate with the rest of the ingredients. And if you let it go for too long, it might kind of make the sauce a little bit too spicy. So here we go with the garlic. And I use this half of this amount to give you an idea. Then we have chopped basil. And I prefer basil. I think the basil is the best addition also because it's the perfect part of summertime. And then you want to mix it all together, just like this. But we're not done yet. The most important ingredient is in the olive oil. If you have access to the finest of extra virgin olive oil, this is the time in which you want to use it because this olive oil is going to do several things. It's going to change the flavor of the tomatoes and it's going to impart its personality. What is that makes extra virgin olive oil extremely important? Extra virgin olive oil is the byproduct of the first press, which means the fruitiness of it, the personality of it is right there in it. Remember, there will be quite a bit of water that will be released from the tomatoes via the salt. When you do this at home, I would say have this made at least an hour before you serve it, up to 4 hours before you serve it. And the longer that you keep it in the bowl, the more that the flavors will come together. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how you make Picchio Pacchio del Conte. The making of rollatini di melanzane is first and foremost fun. The most difficult thing, if there's anything difficult about this recipe, is how to actually handle the eggplant. It's quite easy. You just cut both ends of it. Then once you cut both ends, you need to square out the eggplant. What does it mean? You put it flat on the cutting board, and then you cut one side so it's perfectly square. You roll it over, now the eggplant will be standing right on the cutting board. You cut the other side, you continue with the other side, and then lastly, the last side. So now you have basically a cylinder. At this point, you stand the eggplant up, and with the knife, starting from the top, you cut about 1/4-inch slices. And slice the first one, then the second one, and so forth and so on, until you have all the slices that you want. Before you can grill the slices, you need to brush them with olive oil, sprinkle with a little bit of salt, and do this on both sides. And then what I like to do is I like to cook them on a grill pan. On a grill pan, when the eggplant are only about a 1/4-inch thick, it really doesn't take that much time. 1 minute per side will give you exactly what you want. And it will be a total of 4 minutes in total, if you think about it, because you want to do 1 minute on one side, 1 minute in the back, then turn it again and create the crisscross finish. That's a design element that I like a great deal. And now, once you reach this point, it becomes fun. Let me show you how to make the ricotta filling. What we have here is ricotta that, as I mentioned before, I have already drained. So we go here with our ricotta. Once you get to this point, we need to flavor the ricotta. How do you do that? Quite simply. A little sprinkle of salt on top, and then I like to go with a little bit of pepper. The pepper that I like to do is a little bit on the coarse side. Why do I do that? I do it both for color as well as for flavor. And then some freshly chopped basil, just to infuse it all together. Next to it is the most important part. When I make this at my house, I can only make it with Parmigiano Reggiano. And you know the story, because my wife does not like Romano. What can I tell you? A revolution will not work. When you make it for yourself, listen to me. Romano, it's better. Now, here we go. We add the cheese. To this amount, I would say this would be about enough cheese. And now we're ready to actually mix it all together. This tool that I use allows me to squish everything down. And what I want to do is to make sure that the cheese completely incorporates into the ricotta. And while I do this, I also use my hand to turn this around. Why? It gives me the ability, by turning the bowl around, to incorporate, emulsify all of these ingredients into the perfect layout. And this is exactly what we've done. This is perfect. This is quite flavorful, as a matter of fact. At this point, we're ready now to make the rollatini. What are the rollatini? Rollatini is a very elegant Italian word to say rolls. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So we lay down the eggplant slice. Why do I choose this slice? This is the slice that I like, nice and soft, has nice grill marks on the other side. This is the less appealing one. So we take a little bit of the ricotta, we place it right here in the middle, and then rolling it, just as you would any other piece of lasagna, for those of you who are Italian and in love with lasagna. Here is our first rollatino. Let's make another one. Here's another piece. Let me see what's it. Oh, they're pretty on both sides. So we lay it down just like this. We take a little spoonful of ricotta. I like to place it right in the middle. Why? When I place it in the middle like this, what this does for me already creates for me the perfect roll. You see? When you do this, one of the things that people always get panicky about is, what if it spills out on the side? It won't, because once you roll it down like this, you can pat it just like this, and you can control the flow of the ricotta. So there you are with 2 rollatini. Let's make a third one, just for sport. Which one should we go with? Here we go. Place it down there. A little bit more of the ricotta. Put it right in here. And then we roll it up. When you roll it up, once you get to this point, the finger allows you to make the last turn and to give it this perfect, beautiful decoration. When I do this for myself, one of the things that I'm looking forward to is to always showcase these beautiful grill marks. Why? Does it make it taste better? No. Does it look better? Yes. Is it more fun to eat? Yes. Who says so? Me. All right, enough talking. Let me show you how to plate this. Here we place the last one right here in the middle of the plate. Reason why I use this instrument is because it allows me to guide it exactly where I want to. And here, finally, there is the coup de grace, picchio pacchio del conte. Is picchio pacchio in the style of the count. I remember my mom always saying, "Mamma mia, lo devo fare come lo vuole il conte. I must make it the way the count wants it." My nickname, as a child, was the count. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is how I like to serve my rollatini di melanzane. The simplicity of the eggplant, the interesting combination of the ricotta with the cheese, the pepper, and the basil inside creates, in my opinion, a real culinary concert. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you make rollatini di melanzane with Picchio Pacchio del Conte.
I remember taking a bite of the ricotta thinking that it tasted like ice cream. I remember looking at my wife, who was happy to be there. It wasn't because I looked great, and trust me, I looked sensational. I had this wonderful suit, this wonderful little tie that I brought. Only I would take a suit to go to a farmer to make ricotta, but I didn't care. I wanted to impress my wife. And she told me, I'm so happy. I married a Sicilian. If you guys can cook like this, I will be happy forever. I still cannot make ricotta. But every time I think about cheese, I think what an art form it is to take these ingredients and make them sing in such a unique way.
In Sicily, our most famous desserts are cannoli and cassata. They're both made with ricotta. So I took inspirations from these desserts to show you to use ricotta to make a fantastic pudding with chocolate in it. Let me show you how. This ricotta pudding is going to be your go-to dessert every time you're in a rush and you want to do something unique, full of flavor, yet very simple to make. I've actually taken the ricotta out of the container and we have strained it. In other words, we place it on a colander and we let it sit for about an hour. Why? Even in the ricotta that you buy at your local supermarket, there's quite a bit of serum still trapped into it. Nothing wrong with that. It's fantastic. It tastes wonderful. But to make the pudding thicker, you need to get rid of it. And this is the easiest way to do it. The first thing that I want to do is to add the ricotta right into the bowl in which we're going to mix everything. Now smash it down because this is going to be a process of assembly. The ricotta needs to be sweet. And how do you make the ricotta sweet? Well, the easiest way, obviously, as you can imagine, is sugar. Plenty of sugar. How much is too little sugar? How much is too much sugar? Look, if you're going to do a dessert, you need sugar. As far as I'm concerned, I like it sweet. Now, the sugar has to be mixed perfectly because all this amount that you see on the surface has to be incorporated into every granule of the ricotta itself. There you are. You can already see the ricotta picking up this wonderful finish to it. Now, this is an extrapolation from the making of the filling for the cassata, and you can use any type of chocolate that you want. Crumbled chocolate, grated chocolate, whichever way works best for you. You put it in just a little bit on the inside, maybe a little bit more just because you need to. What do you need to? It's dessert. Now, carefully mix everything together. I'll tell you that my wife, in truth, was the one who invented this dessert. I would like to tell you, I am the one. No, I am not the one. I was making something else, another favorite dish of mine, a dessert that was taught to me by my dad. And my wife saw that there was some leftover ricotta. There was some leftover chocolate. She mixed it all together and she came up with this. And I say, honey, you're a genius. After all, you married me. Now, perfect. The mixture is done. And now we're ready to play it. Let me show you how. Every time I make this dish for myself, for my family, for my friends, I always think of my moments in my youth in Sicily. Why is it so? Well, ricotta is part of who we are. It's how we grow up. It's part of the tradition of my country of origin. This particular dish requires a little bit of attention. What we're going to top it with now is toasted pistachio nuts. But what we've done to these pistachio nuts, we have crumbled them finely. This is typical that you will see in many of the Sicilian sweets when you go to Palermo, to Messina, to Catania. Pistachio nuts are everywhere. I love the way they taste, I love the way they look, and I'm quite generous in the way in which I put it right on top. When it gets to this point, a little bit of trickery that I want to show you to make sure that you have an even thing. Shake it up a bit so it goes even on the creases on the inside. Oh, there you are. The next thing that I'm going to do before I serve it, right on top of it, a little dollop of whipped cream. Last touch. It's a bit of a maraschino cherry on top. To some, this is very simple dessert that you can almost make with your eyes closed. To me, it's a trip back to Sicily, to my youth, and it tastes fantastic. And this is how you make ricotta pudding.
If I could cook the way in which the man made that cheese, I would be extremely happy and I would have accomplished everything that I wanted in my life. If all that you do, you just make money, you cannot make ricotta like that. As far as I'm concerned, you got a long way to go. That man, as far as I'm concerned, that man was amazing. I still envy him. Maybe one day I'll make ricotta too. They're good. I don't know, but I will try. I will try.
So what again? Ricotta pudding. And for dessert, ricotta pudding. Whoa, that will put a few pounds on you.
Give me an option. Give me an option. Let's give him a reason to eat it. Yeah. That's another option. And
You need a smile? Come and cook with me. Today, we're going to make salsicce fagioli, sausage and beans. So simple, so good. Orecchiette pasta with broccoli. Healthy, great, fantastic. Insalata alla siciliana, Sicilian salad, featuring oranges and olives. And learn how our food is connected to the memories of our past. Come for the recipes. Stay for the story.
Salsicce is the Italian name for sausages. I love the way they taste to begin with, but to me, sausages also has something to do with the fact that my father always had these incredible butchers in town that would make the special mix of spices different from everyone else. They always wanted to go. We had a cousin in the town of Alcamo. My father would take me driving with him 2 hours just to go and get the sausages from our cousin in Alcamo. Maybe it's because he was family, or maybe it's because he was really good. But I think that what I relate to sausages is the time that I spent with my dad and this ambition that I had together with my dad of finding the ultimate sausage. So when I say sausage, I think of something dreamy, something beautiful, something unique, something that connects me to my youth in the best possible way, the time that I spent with my dad.
Salsicce fagioli. What does that mean? Sausage and beans. There's not a country in the world that does not have their own favorite recipe of how to make sausage and beans. This is my recipe, Italian style. It's very simple, it only gets done in a single pot, and it tastes fantastic. Let me show you how to make it. First and foremost, you go with extra virgin olive oil. But while the oil gets to temperature, we're gonna cut salsicciotti. Very simple, single sausage, quick karate chop right here in the middle, just so that you have it like this, and then gently you twist it until it becomes like this, and then with a sharp knife, and here you are. The first thing we're gonna do is to brown our sausages. I like to add them into the hot oil at the very beginning, one at a time, by the way. Do not dump them in because the oil will splash back. It will hurt you. I know, it's happened to me before. Why are we doing this? Very simply, primarily what I want to do is to brown them on the outside, but also I want to ensure that they maintain their particular shape. By browning like this, you do several things. All the spices, the flavors which are inside of the sausages are starting to become alive, and quickly they are going to start to leak out together with the other ingredients that we will add on, giving the super flavor that the sausages do. You don't need to blacken them out completely. All that you need to do is to give it enough just so that they brown and they keep their shape. We got the sausages just slightly brown. Remember, they're still raw on the inside. Now I'm gonna take them out of the pan because in the same pan where the juices and the oil from the sausages are leaked out, we're gonna be cooking our other ingredients. Why do we do that? We wanna make sure that all the flavors come together. The first addition we're going to do is garlic, and here it goes. Look at this baby. Beautiful, I love it. Garlic, as you can see, is cut thick. Extremely important to cut it thick because it's gonna be a long braising process. If you were to chop it, the garlic would burn. When you cook it now, you wanna lower the heat and bring it to medium so that all the ingredients will gently brown, but they will not burn. Together with the garlic, the next thing we're going to do is add the onions. The onions that we add are known in this particular cut as la grossolana. Alla grossolana means done without refinement. Yet I believe that the onions cut in this fashion, wide dice, fairly wide, even if uneven, have within themselves the ability of absorbing the flavors even better. And in their country style look, which is this look that I'm imposing in this case, while they might lose on the elegance, they pick up in extra flavor. What is the extra flavor? Well, here we go. Some fresh rosemary, lightly chopped. And together with the rosemary, the next thing that we're going to do is add the sage. Why do we put him so early into the process? I'm of the opinion that when it comes to fresh spices like this, by cooking them into the pan the way that we're doing right now, one of the things that we are achieving, we're allowing them to release their flavor, their oil into the base. And it opens them up, it makes them like bloom, blossom. Now we put back the sausages into the pan. We increase the heat a little bit. I wish there was a way in technology today to let you share into this flavor. It's splendid, especially the rosemary, the sage. They're becoming alive, they're opening up. The next thing that we're going to do is the addition of wine, white wine. And cooking on high heat, what we want to do is reduce the wine as much as possible. This process is very important. And the reason why it's important is because the wine right now is imbuing the sausages, also bringing down some of the heat. And as it reduces, it gives us the very base, the very beginning of the sauce. Look at the big white bubbles that you see right there. These white bubbles are air that is evaporating, going down to the essential juices, which is truly the sauce that will guide us through the whole dish. This is the part where I get hypnotized and somewhat enthralled into what I do. The sauce is coming down just right. The next thing that we want to do is a very important addition, and that is the addition of tomato sauce. But the next addition that I'm making is the one that I want you to be very attentive. This is not chicken stock. This is the water in which we have cooked the beans. Why do we use this? First and foremost, the water is very, very thick. There is an enormous amount of flavor in it. And also, as it cooks together with the tomato sauce, not only makes the sauce far thicker, but all the suspended bits of beans that are trapped into the sauce right now will pick up the flavor of all the elements that we have in the pan, giving us this wonderful combination, not only of the beans,